This amazing sale is this Saturday and Sunday.
The Adventures of Candy Claus continues after this.
Make it the professionals.
Open for your convenience, 10 till 6. Thursdays till...
Mr. T and Emmanuel Lewis in A Christmas Dream. Sponsored in part...
Santa at 1-976-31...
Suckle turkeys, just 69 cents a pound.
Now, something incredible is happening at there. Because...
The following is a TV 39 special presentation.
I don't know. I guess it's okay. My crook's crooked. Well, it's supposed to be. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess that explains the name.
Bloody hell. What's shaking, sheiks?
We're not sheiks. We're shepherds.
What do you mean you're shepherds?
We're shepherds going to see the babe in swaddling clothes, and we got to get the flock out of here. That's right.
What on earth do you mean? What are you up to?
Well, we're on our way to the dress rehearsal down at the community center. They're putting on a Christmas pageant, and we're in it. Yeah, you know, about that, what are our roles again? Well, I'm shepherd number 2, and you're shepherd number 1.
Oh, right, yeah, shepherd number 1. Bloody hell, that's the role of the century.
Yeah, Captain Adam, how come we got stuck with these minor background character roles? Couldn't we do something bigger? Oh, come now, little creep. Not all of us can be the star. Yeah, but we're the only ones in it. Shepherd number 1 and number 2? We can't do better than that.
Blimey, he's got you there.
Plus, wasn't this whole thing your idea? Look, the community center asked if I would put on the Christmas pageant this year, and I said yes, but I wanted to do something different. Everybody does your typical Christmas pageant, and I wanted to be avant-garde. Okay, so I kind of get that, but did you really have to name it Highway to the Manger Zone? Hey, that's show business. Half the battle is in the title. Well, that's certainly avant-garde.
Call it whatever you want. It's still pretty damn strange.
Well, Paul the Skull, Christmas and strange sort of go hand in hand.
Whatever do you mean?
Well, take a look at all the traditions we celebrate around the world. They're all a little odd if you look at it.
Come to think of it, explaining Christmas to somebody does make it sound really weird.
That's right, and it's best represented in the world of cinema.
You mean there's some bonkers Christmas movies?
There's a few examples. I know. Let's ask VC Arnold. Hey, VC Arnold.
VC Arnold activated. Stand by.
What can you tell us about strange Christmas movies?
Processing request, data found. Like any other adjective, strange is subjective to its user. However, when it comes to Christmas movies, there are a few examples that can only be described as and are universally referred to as strange. This fact is undeniable. It goes beyond the world of cinema and into the realm of television in the form of the Christmas television special, in which there are oodles and oodles and oodles upon oodles of, the bulk of which have been forgotten in time, either because they are too strange or too terrible. It goes beyond Rudolph. Get out of here with your Rudolph. Strange Christmas media is immense.
Do you think you could do us a favor and whip us up an episode real quick? Thank you very much. Okay, mates, let's take a look at today's Christmas adventure. It's going to be a fun look through the bizarre side of Christmas movies.
Yes, it's going to be a holly jolly walk on the weird side.
That's right, little creep. And Merry Christmas out there to all of you.
We sure do love all of you out there. We appreciate your support.
That's right, we sure do. So, ho, 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 time for the show. Yar!
Yar!
Out of all the wise men, there's 3 going out tonight. Following a star, oh what a beautiful sight.
danger zone. Gonna take a ride into the manger zone. It's Christmas time, once again, a most joyous occasion. I'm a big fan, and so is Hollywood. Yes, all throughout the world of cinema, there is no shortage of Christmas movies, and the Christmas movie is a very successful film genre. Some of these movies we know quite well, and in some, if not most households, it's a Christmas tradition to watch them. A lot of these movies have pretty much become the standard bearer for the Christmas film. You got your Miracle on 34th Street, It's a Wonderful Life, any one of the Christmas Carol renditions, I mean, just pick one. And of course, there's the coup de grace of all Christmas movies, A Christmas Story. And then you got your more contemporary Christmas classics like Home Alone or National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. All these movies have become just as common as Christmas trees or wreaths or mistletoe or those little light-up Santas you put on your front lawn or Christmas lights, and you get the idea. The point is, these movies were impactful and resonated throughout all time itself and have become commonplace in Christmas tradition. But why is that? Why are some Christmas movies more memorable than others? Why do some stick around and become family traditions to watch, and why do others simply not? Like 1989's Prancer. Why wasn't that movie bigger of a deal? I mean, it really should have been. It's pretty original as far as Christmas movie concept goes, and it's got a pretty dynamite cast. Come on, Sam Elliott and Abe Vigoda in the same movie together? Wake me up, I'm dreaming. And Ariana Richards is in this. Who the hell is that? Well, she would go on to play Lex in Jurassic Park. But before Jurassic Park, she had this to hang her hat on, as well as Tremors, and that Cinnamon Toast Crunch commercial. And it's not like Prancer went under everyone's radar. It did pretty well at the box office. Yeah, it had an $18 million take-in to counter a $7 million budget, so that's really good. But it seemed like as soon as it left the theaters, nobody really gave a shit anymore. Yep, it was seemingly swept under the proverbial rug. But it did have a bit of an afterlife on VHS. It was first released in 1990 by Nelson Home Entertainment. It would be released again in 1998 by MGM Home Entertainment, this time in a kid's clamshell. But that's sort of to be expected, because it is a family movie after all, and for some reason, family movies on VHS would eventually always end up in a big, clumsy, dumb clamshell. Well, anywho, even though most of us have sort of forgotten about this movie, somebody remembered it because in 2001, it had a sequel. It did? It did. Why? Why not? I had no idea. No one did. Well, that's too bad. Yeah, it is. Wait, who are you talking to? I don't know. Anyways, 2001 saw the release of Prancer Returns. Yes, they decided to use one of my favorite methods of naming a sequel by simply putting returns in there. To find out more about that, tune into the previous adventure, The Psychology of Sequels. Yep, Prancer Returns was released and almost immediately forgotten about. And it certainly did not help that it was direct to video. And that being the case, you might have already guessed that neither Sam Elliott nor Abe Vigoda nor Ariana Richards is in this, but Jack Palance is. So it does have some star power. It's probably worth a watch. I mean, I'm not going to, but you can. So really, all in all, what makes a Christmas movie everlasting is truly neither here nor there. And if a Christmas movie, like anything else, is good or bad, is in the eye of the beholder. Now, whether or not a Christmas movie is good or bad, memorable or not so much, the premise is usually the same, or at least the intention is, and that is to enhance the joyous holiday season and to capitalize on all those warm and fuzzy feelings. And a movie doesn't have to be good or bad to do this. Sometimes, just sometimes, it can be downright strange. And throughout the natural course of cinema, there are a few examples of this. Movies that had every intention of capturing the essence of Christmas, but were interpreted quite differently. And today, we're going to take a look at the stranger side of Christmas movies and explore some films that have no other choice but to be called oddities. So for goodness sake, find yourself a hall-to-deck, hang a star from the highest bough, stuff your stockings, and stock your stuffings, because we're going to take a headlong dive into holiday surrealism on film. In today's adventure, Captain Adam's Strange Christmas! Christmas! So, when you think of Christmas, do you typically think of the bizarre and the macabre? Probably not, huh? But if you take a closer look, Christmas is a little strange. I mean, think about it. We do stuff like chop down trees and bring them indoors and put stuff on them. We hang up our socks so that they can be filled with candy and those little travel board games. We eat and drink weird stuff like eggnog, fruitcake, and Hickory Farms gift boxes. We sing songs like the 12 Days of Christmas, where if you look at the lyrics, it's really the rantings of a madman. What am I going to do with all these Lords of Leaping? We don't think of these things as strange, but they sort of are. And they're only the traditions that have stuck around. There are plenty of Christmas traditions in the form of Christmas characters that haven't stuck around. Yes, there was a time when there was more than just Santa Claus. In fact, there was an entire Christmas Justice League. There was the Krampus, or Krampus if you're nasty, and a lot of us know him from his recent resurgence in popularity. But if you're not familiar, he is a demon that punishes wicked children, and thank God for him. And there was also Frau Perchta, who was essentially a Christmas witch, whom, mind you, if you were rude to, she would disembowel you and replace your entrails with garbage. Merry Christmas. And then there was the Belsnickel, who was a mountain hobo who wore antlers and gave you presents. And who could forget the Mary Lloyd, a horse wraith who sings you riddles and demands that you give it beer. And you better do it. That's just to name a few, and you don't have to look too closely to realize that Christmas is a little strange. But my oh my, we love it so much, and this fact is not lost on the world of cinema, and there are a few dazzling examples of Christmas movies that are totally bonkers. Like, for example, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, which was released in theaters November 14th, 1964, and proceeded to be one of the worst movies of all time, or at least that's how it's perceived. Yes, this movie is universally panned as being horrible, and the general consensus is that it sucks. But nay, I tell you, nay! I'm not going to say this movie is good by any stretch of the imagination, but I am going to say it's not that bad. I mean, it is bad, but I've seen a lot worse, and this movie is at least enjoyable. Sure, it's bad, but it was sort of supposed to be. I mean, come on, did you really think they were going to make the next sci-fi epic with this one? Yeah, it's sort of a parody in and of itself. They certainly weren't taking themselves too seriously with this one, and why people do take it too seriously, I really don't know. Come on, the movie's called Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. What were you expecting? If you watch this movie and go into this thinking it's going to be like The Godfather, well, that's pretty silly, and that's your fault. The movie's title tells you, and therefore warns you, that it's going to be a goofy movie. And hence, it should not be taken too seriously, and then it ends up on one of these bullshit internet lists of worst movies of all time. If you take any of those so-called lists or polls as gospel, well, you're daft in the head. It's all subjective. Not to mention, this movie wasn't meant to break any boundaries or set any records or win any awards. It was just made to be enjoyed. It was supposed to be shitty. So therefore, putting it on any list of worst movies of all time is redundant, pointless, silly, and stupid. All in all, yes, this movie is pretty bad, but I like it. It's enjoyable, it's pleasant, it's fun. This movie is precisely what it was meant to be, and it's unique. Certainly for 1964, long before the days of late 80s trash cinema and early 90s direct-to-video garbage. And it was also groundbreaking. Well, not effects-wise. Yeah, I know. That's supposed to be a Martian. Sure, it's pretty laughable and not really convincing, but at least they tried harder than the original Star Trek did. Because according to them, that's an alien. And so is this. So, yeah, this doesn't look so bad. Santa Claus Conquers the Martians is just a very unique film, as strange as it is. But strange doesn't always mean bad. It just means strange. And fun fact here, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians features the first on-screen representation of Mrs. Claus. Yep. Bet you didn't know that, did you? Yeah. See, that's why you watch this show. That's it right there. And another fun-filled fact about this film is that after it was released in 1964, its circulation would continue. Yeah, it kept being distributed and shown in pretty much every theater come Christmas time. Okay, maybe not all theaters, but many of them. And this would be the case throughout the rest of the 60s, into the 70s, and into the early 80s when it eventually stopped. And people would go see it in droves. They would flock to it. They had to see it. They had to see the ridiculousness that was and still is Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. So, you know what that means, don't you?
It means that Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, as quote-unquote bad as it is and silly as it is one of the highest grossing films of all time. Now, don't get too excited. That stat certainly has an asterisk beside it, because if your movie is in theaters once a year for almost 20 years, well, of course you're going to make a lot of money. Well, either way, that's still pretty impressive, considering that this movie was made on a budget of a little over $200,000. But that was in 1964, so let's see. Adjusted for inflation, $200,000 would be about $70 billion today. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know what it is, and I'm not going to find out. I don't care. But still, 1964, $200,000 wasn't a lot of movie to make money on. Yeah, a lot of money to make a movie on. Anyways, like I was saying, 1964, $200,000 wasn't a lot of money to make a movie on. Yep, that was a low budget for 1964, and when you watch this movie, you can certainly tell. But that's part of the movie's charm, isn't it? As I had said, this movie was, in a way, in theaters all the way up until the 1980s, when it was eventually released on VHS. And that's where this whole thing starts to get very interesting. Yep, better wear a bib, bub, because it's going to get very juicy. Through some sort of clerical error, contractual oversight, or negligence, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians is public domain, meaning that the film's distribution rights, particularly pertaining to home media, are up in the air. Yeah, anyone, and I mean anyone, can slap this movie on a tape and sell it without obtaining any kind of license. The rights are public domain, much like in the case of Night of the Living Dead, and coincidentally enough, It's a Wonderful Life. Speaking of Christmas movies. Now, since then, I think with those two films, some kind of contractual amendment has been put in place to prevent such a thing from happening any longer. But with Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, nobody really seems to give a shit. Yes, anyone could have put this on VHS, and it certainly seems like anyone did, because every low-rent, 2-bit, bottom-shelf, fourth-party bargain bin distributor put this bad boy on tape. So there are a lot of distributions for this, and all these distributions makes it rather hard to track them all down. For the sake of time and our sanity, I'm just going to talk about what I was able to come up with. Looks like the earliest VHS distribution was in 1985 by Embassy Home Entertainment. And look at that original suggested retail price. Could you imagine paying $60 for this? I mean, I like this movie and all, but $60? Woo! And that's actually pretty cheap for VHS back then. And it's important to note that Embassy Home Entertainment wasn't exactly a low-rent VHS distributor. This movie was released by some major players, Embassy being one of them, and Columbia TriStar Home Video being the other. I really can't believe they released this. But then again, they also released Troll 2 on VHS, so, yeah. But anyways, yeah, they released Santa Claus Conquers the Martians in 1994. Good old Video Treasures would release it in 1986, and so did Good Times Home Video, and you're going to notice a theme here with the cover art. Because, well, most of these distributions just aren't very good, and that's to be expected. Hey, they are what they are, and that's part of the charm, and I sort of have a thing for very cheaply designed VHS cover art. And there's certainly no shortage of that with this movie. It would be released in 1987 by United American Video Corporation and by Christmas Classics, a division of Amvest Video Corporation, New Jersey. Well, at least I've heard of the state. Yeah, in the mid-'80s, there were VHS distributors absolutely everywhere. And I guarantee you that 90% of them did not make it out of that decade. And these two distributions are more stunning examples of marvelous cover art. Stand in bewilderment and behold the bewitching beauty. I'll give you a moment to catch your breath. Enough. It would be released in 1995 by Wham! USA, a division of Jeff Films International. Your guess is as good as mine, and look at that cover art. That's not even a picture from the movie. It's from another Santa Claus movie, in which I'm going to talk about, but one thing at a time, and I'll get to it. It was released in 1999 by Front Row Entertainment, and once again, take a look at that cover art. It's yet another tape with the wrong Santa on the front. That's clearly a stock photo of Santa Claus. It was released in 2001, if you can believe that, by Delta Entertainment Corporation, whoever the hell that is, with cover art that, well, seems like they tried a little harder than most of them did. And somewhere in between all this, I say that because there's no date on it, it was released by Treasure Box Collection in a digitally remastered version of the film. And let me tell you, If there's any film you don't want digitally remastered, it's this one. And once again, look at the cover art. That's yet another stock image of Santa Claus. I really just don't understand why these distributors did this. I mean, there's plenty of images of Santa Claus from the film. It's not like there was any fear of copyright infringement. I mean, there's no copyright involved, so what's the deal? And even if there was, you clearly have the rights to the film by distributing it, so what are you doing? I don't know. I don't get it. But anyways, if you wanted to have any of these copies for yourself today, well, some of them are a bit more rare than others. There are plenty of listings for certain ones, but the prices are a bit mid-tier, but still a lot cheaper than $60. There is one more thing that this film is most notable for, and that's for being Pia Sadora's first film. But really, does anybody care about that? Did anyone ever care about that? Well, a lot of these VHS distributors did, because on many of these distributions, they pushed the hell out of that fact. But it does make you wonder, did that even really help sales at all? I mean, I didn't even know who she was until just a few years ago, and I still really don't. But anyways, in the small world of strange Christmas films, Martians would not be the only thing that Santa Claus would have to contend with. There would be a time when he would come face to face with evil itself. And we'll talk about it when we come back. Now's a good time to feed your reindeer. Captain Adam's Strange Christmas will be right back. It's Christmas time down at Cowboy Pork Chop's Choke and Puke Family Restaurants. You got a hankering for a hungering or a hungering for a hankering, take a break from the Christmas shopping and come on down and rustle you up some grub. Pack your saddlebag with a big buckaroo burger. Add cow chips and a drink, only $4.99. And be sure to get that cowboy size for only 49 cents extra. Worth every penny. Or try our world-famous fried fart basket, only $5. Or get yourself an armpit and cheese submarine sandwich, only $5. And be sure to get the Christmas time favorite, the peppermint loose meat milkshake. And be sure to pick yourself up a Captain Adam Christmas time plush doll, only $1.99 with the purchase of any value meal, while supplies last. Yeah! So treat yourself good this holiday season and come on down to Cowboy Pork Chop's Choke and Puke Family Restaurants. Yeehaw!
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from everyone down at Cowboy Pork Chop's Choke and Puke Family Restaurants. Cowboy Pork Chop not responsible for death or illness.
It's Fat Boy Surplus! Fat Boy Surplus! Husky Boys Irregular Clothing Outfitters! Fat Boy Surplus! Fat Boy Surplus! Specializing in closeouts, irregulars, factory buyouts, and unclaimed freight, which means bargains for you! Shop Fat Boy Surplus! Fat Boy Surplus! And get Mega Deal! Mega Deal! And get all the things that nobody else wanted! We're the region's largest distributor of Fat Boy sizes! Fat Boy sizes! Like Huskies, Cadets, and So Fat! All irregular, all factory buyouts that your kid will absolutely not like wearing. They'll hate them, but you'll love them! So come on down and get Mega Deal! Mega Deal! On irregular, itchy, scratchy, overly starched, and hardly made jeans, only $4.99. Mega deal. And 3-sleeved skateboard dude or radical alien t-shirts in an assortment of colors, only $3.99.
Mega deal.
Then for a limited time only, get a 5-pack of fat socks, 2 for $5 or 5 for $2. Your choice.
Mega deal.
So shop Fat Boy Surplus.
Fat Boy Surplus.
Husky Boys Irregular Clothing Outfitters. And shop our new locations in Hamilton and Sharon Petersburg. It's Fat Boy Surplus.
Fat Boy Surplus.
Husky Boys Irregular Clothing Outfitters. Attention, attention, stop what you're doing right now. A major class action lawsuit is underway against Cowboy Pork Chop's Choke and Puke Family Restaurants. And you may be entitled to compensation. Call the law firm of Dillon and Triceratops today at 1-800-TRICERATOPS. There's never a charge to evaluate your case. You, yes you, a massive class action lawsuit is underway against Cowboy Pork Chop's Choke and Puke Family Restaurants. And Dillon and Triceratops is here to help. If you've ever eaten at, visited, driven past, or even heard of Cowboy Pork Chop's Choke and Puke Family Restaurants, you may be entitled to compensation. Call the law offices at Dillon and Triceratops today. That's 1-800-TRICERATOPS. If you've got a phone, you've got a Triceratops. Call 1-800-TRICERATOPS for your free case evaluation. You, yes, I'm talking to you. A massive class action lawsuit is underway against Cowboy Pork Chop's Choke and Puke Family Restaurants. Call the law offices at Dillon and Triceratops today to find out if you are entitled to compensation. Pick up the phone and call 1-800-TRICERATOPS. That's 1-800-TRICERATOPS. There's never a charge to evaluate your case. If you've got a phone, you've got a Triceratops. Call Dillon and Triceratops today. I hope those halls are properly decked. We now return to Captain Adam's Strange Christmas.
For centuries upon centuries, Santa Claus has ever been our friend. He is and always has been a representation of all that is good, right, and decent in the world. He inspires hope and muses our imaginations. He is charity and goodwill personified. Santa Claus is a crusader of good, a defender of the innocent, and a keeper of peace. So it's only natural that a rivalry would exist between him and the devil. As natural as this rivalry is, it has only been depicted once on film, at least to my knowledge, and that film is 1959's Santa Claus, otherwise known as Santa Claus versus the Devil, which is a Mexican fantasy film that wasn't released in the States until October of 1960. It was directed by Cuban director Rene Cardona, who has a very expansive repertoire of film. Yeah, he directed all kinds of stuff. The other most notable film would be 1969's Night of the Bloody Apes. Now that's a title. He was a director that had tremendous vision, which is clearly represented in Santa Claus. Yeah, vision indeed. There is a lot going on in this film. It certainly is a unique Christmas movie, and furthermore, a unique take on Santa Claus. For example, in this movie, Santa Claus does not live at the North Pole. Instead, he lives in a floating castle in outer space. And if Santa Claus wasn't magical enough, he enlists the help of Merlin. Yeah, Merlin, the famous wizard from King Arthur. Yeah, he's in this. For what reason? I really couldn't tell you. And he apparently lives with Santa Claus, and speaking of that, Santa Claus also lives with someone known as the Magic Keymaker, who looks like someone you wouldn't ask directions from, even if you were very lost and he was the only one around. And he also lives with a rabble of multicultural children, because, well, why not, I guess? This movie has a lot of moving parts and a lot of bizarre imagery, like, what is this? And what is Santa Claus doing here? And, oh my God, that's terrifying. Now, this movie does capture the magical essence of Christmas. It just goes about it in a very bizarre way. This movie stands alone, not just as a Christmas movie, but as a film in general. There is absolutely nothing like this. As this movie's unofficial title implies, Santa Claus does fight the devil. Well, in a way. Oh, Lucifer is always trying to do away with Santa Claus and the good deeds and decency he inspires. And he attempts to do so with the work of his right-hand imp, a demon named Pitch. Yeah, you never see Lucifer, you just hear his voice. And speaking of that, in the English dubbed version, I swear the voice of Lucifer is portrayed by James Earl Jones. I can't find anything to confirm that fact, and like most of the other voiceover actors in the English dubbed version, he went uncredited. I mean, would you want credit for this movie? But that has to be him. Just take a listen.
And show the world who is its real master!
That has to be James Earl Jones. He has an unmistakable voice and one that's never replicated. And if you're saying, geez, 1960, he would have been too young. No, he was born in 1931, which means he was damn near 30 years old when the English dubbed version of this movie was made. It's entirely possible that this was him. If I ever happen to meet him, I'm not going to ask about Coming to America. I'm not going to ask about Field of Dreams. I most certainly will not be asking about Darth Vader, because God knows he gets enough of that, and I especially will not be asking about Exorcist 2, because he'll more than likely hit me with a chair. But I will be asking him if he was the voice of Lucifer in Santa Claus versus the Devil, because if anybody knows, it would be him. And I'm also going to ask him about Meteor Man. Santa Claus versus the Devil, or just Santa Claus if you'd rather, is usually listed with and compared to Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, as is the case for the very video that you're watching right now. This is because these two films are very similar in more than just one way. Yes, I know they're both Christmas films, they're both B-movies, and they're both movies about Santa Claus. But there's other reasons why they're so similar. One of which is that they both pit Santa Claus against outrageous yet somehow believable foes. And like Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, Santa Claus versus the Devil, or just Santa Claus, also had a very extensive theatrical life. Yes, it too enjoyed almost a 20-year circulation in theaters, as it was a favorite reel to play around Christmas time. In fact, I think it's safe to say that it's more than likely that these two films were often shown as a double feature. And like Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, this film is public domain, meaning that it too had many VHS
VHS distributions, however, seemingly not as many as Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. But just as hard to track them all down, so once again, I'm just going to talk about what I found. But don't look for any top-tier distributors with this one. It was released in 1988 by Star Classics with okay cover art. It's interesting that they decided to use an illustration for the cover art picture. I mean, again, why not just use a picture from the film? Come on, it can't be easier to draw something as opposed to just using a still from the movie. And this cover art does make this look like one of those unlicensed cartoon cavalcade VHS, you know, the ones that you'd find in Kmart for $2. It was released in 1990 by Silver Screen Gems. Yeah, I'm sure that was a great distributor, with a sleeve that looks strangely older than the previous distribution. I mean, look at this thing. It looks like it's from '82. I was very surprised to find out it was from 1990. I do like how it looks, and I sure do wish it was older, but it's not. And not surprisingly at all, Good Times Home Video couldn't help but get involved. Yes, the kings of the third-party distributors got their piece of the Santa Claus versus the Devil Pie in 1990 as well. And this cover art is great. Look at that patina. And also, it uses an actual picture from the movie. And look, it wears upon it a badge. And what is that badge for? What does it say? Best Family Films Award from the San Francisco Film Festival. Yes, this movie won an award. Yes, as strange as this movie is, it's an award winner. Award winner, huh? Jeez, I'd hate to see the competition. You know what I mean? Yeah. It would be released in 1994 by Brentwood Home Video. Well, I don't know, you got me. And what is going on with this cover art? Who is that? I'm assuming this is Santa Claus. It sort of looks like Santa Claus. He's on the cover of a Santa Claus VHS. It says Santa Claus right above him, but where's his hat? If he had his Santa hat on, I would know right away it was Santa. If you're going to use a stock illustration of Santa Claus, in which they clearly have done here, you might want to use one with a Santa hat. This really could be anybody. This could be your 7th grade shop teacher. I don't know. It's supposed to be Santa Claus, but again, why don't you just use a picture from the movie? This distribution is interesting because while the other distributions are rather easy to find and go for pretty cheap, this one, for some reason, goes on the high side. $65? Really? Oh wait, that explains it. It says here that it's rare. See? That makes a lot of sense now. Of course, it would if there weren't other listings for the exact same thing. It's not exactly rare when there's multiple listings for it. So, you know, if you're going to list something, it pays to do your research on what is and isn't rare. These prices are all pretty damn high, and they're all described as being rare. Well, you know, it's easy to say that something is rare, but it's very hard to prove it. The cinema landscape is not the only place to find Christmas oddities. The realm of television is a wide world of weirdness when it comes to bizarre Christmas material. And this comes in the form of the immortal and ever-famous Christmas special. And these are best remembered with stuff like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but even that has some pretty weird stuff to it. Like, you wouldn't really think to expect a flying lion in a Christmas special, but Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer has one. The Isle of Misfit Toys is ruled by a flying lion. And no one bats an eye. In fact, most of the Rankin and Bass Christmas features do have a lot of weird aspects to them. Yeah, you can pretty much tell that they were big fans of sword and sorcery stuff and fantasy fiction, and most of their Christmas features have some sort of sword and sorcery aspect to them, which is something you don't typically associate with Christmas, but I suppose we should because it all goes together so naturally. Or at least it seems like it does. I mean, think about it. Most of these Rankin and Bass specials have stuff like winter wizards and forest sorcerers and fairy queens. Dairy queens? No, fairy queens. Oh, and they also have things like ice dragons and giant marauding vultures and time-traveling whales. It's all stuff that's pretty bizarre to find in a Christmas special, yet here they are, and no one seems to say a word about them. I guess it's because these specials are so beloved and well-remembered, and it all just goes together very well. However, you can't say that for many other Christmas specials. Yeah, not all Christmas specials are created equal, and some of them are just plain worth forgetting. A prime example of this is 1984's Scrooge's Rock and Roll Christmas. Christmas. Okay, remember earlier how I said that strange doesn't necessarily mean good or bad, it just means strange? Well, sometimes it means bad. And that is the case for this abomination. It was a TV movie that first aired in 1984 and was never heard of again. Yeah, they buried this thing. It is bad. Now, as the name implies, it has to do with Scrooge, which in turn has to do with The Christmas Carol, the famous Charles Dickens novel that has like a bazillion film adaptations for. Unfortunately, though this has nothing to do with the story, it is counted among them. Yeah, this just happens to have Scrooge in it. It has nothing to do with A Christmas Carol. Nothing really happens in this. It's just Scrooge who's sitting at a desk with some girl and they're looking into a magic snow globe that introduces the musical interludes. I don't really know what's happening. This could have been anybody. It didn't have to be Scrooge. It has nothing to do with Ebenezer Scrooge. They were clearly going with some good old-fashioned name recognition. I mean, the title is pretty attractive, as absurd and unnecessary as it is. You know, I don't tend to think of rock and roll when I think of A Christmas Carol. But Scrooge's Rock and Roll Christmas is pretty catchy, and its primary objective was to get people to tune in. And people did, and were stricken with immediate regret. Because even though the name is attractive, it's totally misleading. Yeah, this is not a rock and roll Christmas at all. Besides, I don't want a rock and roll Christmas. I certainly don't want Scrooge involved. This was billed as a movie, even though it's nothing more than a musical showcase. Yeah, it features the top rock and roll artists of 1984, like Paul Revere and the Raiders, and Three Dog Night. Don't get me wrong, these are great bands and all, but this was 1984. I mean, hell, by this time, you could have seen these guys at county fairs. Okay, so there's that. And since this was 1984, and it was called Scrooge's Rock and Roll Christmas, you really should have half expected Billy Idol to play Jacob Marley, but it wasn't like that at all. It should have been like that, but it wasn't like that. Instead, it's just Scrooge and some girl watching these musical acts through a snow globe. So we're watching them watch them. Boy, that is a passport to excitement. Real riveting television. All it is a musical showcase of bands playing Christmas music. But at least it's rockin' renditions of Christmas music, right? Well, you think so based on the name, but instead, they're the worst, cheesiest, campiest, stupidest versions of classic Christmas songs that no one wanted to hear. I really just don't understand how this got the green light. Obviously it did. Somebody had to approve this, but why? Who said, hey, you know, Paul Revere and the Raiders would make a great primetime act in 1984. But hey, at least they'll play some rock and roll Christmas songs. Well, they don't even do that. They're just normal Christmas songs, just really shitty versions of them. So let's break this down. You have a Christmas special that's based on a Christmas Carol in which it has nothing to do with. Scrooge is in the title even though he's barely in it and doesn't even need to be. And it's a rock and roll musical showcase that doesn't even feature rock and roll music. I mean, there's just so many things wrong about it. I'm surprised it's even about Christmas. Because it is. They got that part right. The rest of it is just a misleading mess. This is strange because it's so terrible it should have never been conceived. And I'm not going to be fair and magnanimous and say stuff like, oh, it's all subjective. Not this. This is awful. It was poorly produced, poorly acted, poorly performed, a terrible theory that was applied horribly. The one saving grace is that Jack Elam is in this. He plays Scrooge, but even he can do nothing for it. I very truly cannot warn you enough against watching this. Now, as terrible as this is, it did have a very luscious life on VHS. However, oddly enough, it appears to be a VHS enigma because I had a terribly hard time tracking down both the release years and the distributors. Yeah, there's basically no information available on these. I was able to figure out that Sony released it in 1985, as well as the beta, and it was released in 1990 by, I don't know, somebody. Who knows and who cares? It was also released in an unknown year with quite possibly the laziest cover art known to man. It was also released in yet another unknown year with cover art that makes it look like an Alice Cooper album. And here's another strange thing about this. These are hard to find. Yeah, as of December of 2022, there are only only 2 listings on eBay, and the prices are pretty upper mid-tier, and though this is really shitty, it is a good example of something that is actually rare. All in all, as terrible as it is, if you were to find this in a thrift store for very, very, very cheap, definitely pick it up. Well, that about does it for this great Christmas adventure. I'm gonna put a bow on this bad boy. The video is long enough, and chances are you haven't watched this far anyway. But if you did make it this far in the video, I want to say thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if there's something I didn't talk about that you wish I did, well, there's always next Christmas. Again, thank you very much for watching, and from my crew to yours, a very Merry Christmas to you, and a Happy New Year. This will be the last show of 2022. Thank you very much for spending the year with me, and I hope to see you in 2023. Merry Christmas, take care out there, and I'll see you next time, only on Captain Adam's VHS Pirate Ship.